Welcome to another edition of Sports Talk Weekly. I'm your host, Chris Jester, and I'm joined again tonight by Josh Gomez and Randy Bellew Jr. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
I'm doing pretty well. How about you guys?
Doing good. Got to watch a heck of a game last night between the Pacers and the Heat. Pretty good.
Fun game.
Well, we'll go ahead and lead right into that. The Eastern Conference Finals are going on right now. It is a currently 3-2 lead by the Miami Heat. Game 6 is tomorrow night. A lot of talk on the internet about that game today. They'll have both sides. We'll go ahead and let Randy go ahead and say his piece. Tell us why you think it was a good win for the Pacers.
I think it was a good win because it wasn't their best effort of the series. I think they left a lot on the board. 59% from the free throw, only 13 of 22. And I think when LeBron got in foul trouble in the first half, I believe he left the game with 5:32 in the second quarter. Indiana had a 4-point lead, and in that stretch until halftime when LeBron sat out, the Heat went plus 13. They ended the half with a 9-point lead. And it wasn't until LeBron went out with his fifth foul about midway through the third quarter that the Pacers were able to turn the tide. They got up by, they were up by 9 when LeBron came back in with I think he only sat out about the first minute 20 of the fourth quarter. He came back in. They immediately cut it to 2, and then Indiana was able to hold on for the win. I think the great takeaway for the Heat in this game was the role players. I mean, yes, LeBron only scored 7 points. He only had a +1 as far as a plus-minus for the game in 24 minutes of work, 2 of 10 shooting. He wasn't on the floor that much, not what he's accustomed to, but when he was on the floor, he really didn't play that well. Like I said, 2 of 10 from the field, 2 of 3 from free throw. He did have 4 assists and 2 rebounds. But I think for the Pacers, I think there was a lot of missed opportunities. I think they really could have broken open there early in the second quarter. But back to the Heat, Rashard Lewis, I mean, the guy has only shot 34% from 3 this season. He went 6 of 9 last night, and he did have a couple open looks, but, I mean, he really drained him when they needed him. That was all 18 of his points. And then your other guys chipping in, the veteran Ray Allen, 15 big points. And then Bosch actually had the highest plus-minus of the entire Heat team last night. They were plus 10 with him on the floor. Struggled a little bit from 3, 2 of 7. One of them was a desperation, bank in from about 25 feet away. But he was 9 of 21 from the floor and 2 of 7 from 3 for 20 points. That's about all that you ask from him. So, I mean, I think looking back on it, I think the Pacers played just well enough to win. They played desperate. And I think going into Game 6, you kind of have to wonder, okay, did they use up everything they had just to get this to a Game 6 in Miami?
All right. Now, I'm going to do a lot of defending of Miami later, but I'm going to go ahead and play devil's advocate here and give some reasons why I do think it was a good win for Indiana. First of all, like you said, LeBron did only score 7 points even when he was on the floor, and I don't think he was walking on eggshells, and it was really affecting his play until he picked up the quote-unquote fifth foul. So I do think it was a off game for LeBron, fouls aside. And like you said, Rashard Lewis, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, his teammates stepped up and they filled in. Any Heat fan cannot expect Rashard Lewis to go off for 18 points in the next game. That can't be a thing. Bosh putting up his 20. His teammates bailed him out. So LeBron having an off game is not the reason the Heat lost the game. Now I want to put that on the table right there. That is a poor excuse for any Heat fan, to be honest. Paul George, 37 points. The guy typically comes up really well in elimination games. Remember, he had a huge game in Game 7 against the Hawks too. Yeah. Has anyone risen faster in their NBA career than Paul George? Has anyone gotten better quicker than Paul George? Like, I'm amazed to see this kid develop from going from being a 7 points a game role player off the bench to becoming an all-star and making the All-NBA third team. Like, he's just really blossomed into his own. I heard a quote from Charles Barkley, who sometimes he sounds like a maniac and sometimes you know what he's talking about. He said if George didn't have to play in the league with LeBron James and Kevin Durant at the same time, he would be the best small forward in the NBA. And I think that that's a pretty fair assessment of his skills. I remember hearing back during the draft class with John Wall and Derek Favors and all these other great players in that draft class with George. One anonymous Eastern Conference scout said Paul George would be the best player from this draft class in 5 years. And we're coming up on that, and he's making that guy look pretty smart. We never found out who it was, but right before the draft, that was said. And I remember hearing rumors of the Pacers trying to work out a trade with the Nets to trade for to move up and take Derek Favors. It worked out pretty well for Indiana. That didn't happen for them. But
yeah,
I think we saw a huge effort from George. As much as Lance Stevenson annoys me, and I get on his case, his weird antics work. It reminds me a lot of Dennis Rodman when he played on the Bulls, and he'd play his head games to get in the head of the opponent. And even if you can say LeBron's a cool, calm, collected guy, and Stevenson doesn't get in his head, he's dedicating mental energy to what Stevenson's doing. Even the little weird things like blowing in his ear, you know what I mean? Like whispering sweet nothings, like. Yeah.
Like,
those are things Lance Stevenson does.
I think with that Lance
and
Stevenson,
they get in your head.
I think with that Lance Stevenson just wanted to be memed.
He broke the internet today. Yeah, that was everywhere.
Last night this morning, I don't know how many Lance Stevenson memes I saw on Facebook.
Oh, there's tons.
Oh, worst. I love the one where he's blowing out the birthday cake.
The one of him blowing on the NES cartridge was actually retweeted by Nintendo. So even they got it all. Yes. I will say this about Lance Stevenson. His antics are antics. I mean, he's the type of guy, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, you hate him. And I totally understand that. A misnomer I've heard today, I heard a lot of people on ESPN, a lot of people on the radio today locally here in Indianapolis talk to some people, said you can't win with that guy. Yes, you can. Like you just said, the Bulls won with Dennis Rodman. Guys like Ron Artest, you need that guy because that is your emotional spark. And people often forget too with Lance, he's only 23 years old.
Yeah. And also,
this is on his rookie deal. He does have growing up to do, no doubt about it. But his talent, his ability to take over games is incredible. The thing is, as he matures as a player, can you also take those moments where he takes over games against you? Can he stop being, can he be as big of a help as he can be a hurt at times?
Josh, before you get to your point, do you think Lance, he needs to do that growing up for Indiana to consider re-signing him? Do you think he's an asset that they really want to make sure they get signed in the offseason? And is he worth as big of a contract as he's played for this year because of the off the court stuff? There were some rumors earlier this year with him getting in a fight with teammates. He has a lot of history before he was in the NBA with assault charges, and there was allegations against him of pushing his girlfriend down the stairs, I remember, and a sexual assault charge against him when he was in high school too. So, are these the kind of things the Pacers need to keep in mind now? Because we've learned sometimes it's not just boys being boys. Sometimes there is that stuff there. I'm not saying that Lance Stevenson's another Aaron Hernandez. I'm just saying that he has the off the court stuff. He looks like one of those guys. I don't know. Is he just an emotional weird guy who's just kind of out there and his personality is okay, or is this something the Pacers need to consider when they're paying a lot of money to a guy to be a future part of your team, because he is really young still?
I think I think whether we resign him or not has a lot to do with what other teams will offer him. I know for a fact that he loves playing for Larry Bird. I remember reading a story a while back. His whole family has moved here to Indianapolis, and they have told him already, whether you sign with the Pacers or with another team, we're staying here. So, I mean, that even dumb little things like that factor into it. I think he does re-sign with the Pacers. I don't see him. Some people were saying 11 or 12 million. I don't think it's anywhere near close to that. I could see the Pacers re-signing him in the ballpark of maybe 3 years, $26 million. I see something like that where, I mean, because really the Pacers, it's going to depend on, they could re-sign him. I know owner Herb Seiben has said in the past that he wants to avoid the luxury tax. They try to run the team pretty economically. But, I mean, if another team comes out and offers him that $10 or $11 million, I could see him going. But, I mean, I know that he loves playing for Larry Bird. And he's Larry's guy. Larry picked him. Lance was not a largely recruited player coming out of high school. For the numbers that he set, there was character issues coming out of high school. He had that assault charge. Now, mind you, all that off the court stuff was many years ago. There hasn't been anything within the last at least 3 years, I believe. So and really off the court, as far as what we hear here in Indianapolis, I mean, he lives a pretty quiet life. I actually, strangely enough, I know somebody that lives just right next to him, and they said it's pretty quiet where he's at. There's really not much going on there. So I mean, as far as I think we're worried about his character issues on the court. I think that maturation will come, and if I'm Larry Bird and I can affordably make him an offer, yeah, I think they do keep him. I think the only thing that could keep him from signing somewhere is if some GM decides to throw ridiculous money at him.
Josh, did you get a chance to watch the game last night?
I honestly didn't watch enough of it to really have a conversation. Like, I watched a little bits of it, but I was like, I didn't really watch enough to know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm not going to pretend like I did.
Okay.
I will say this real quick. The whole thing, everybody's, all the memes and stuff about Lance blowing in LeBron's ear. Y'all realize he did that last year too, right?
Really?
No one made a story.
I think
he always does crap like that.
Yeah,
he's a bigger name player now, is what it is.
Yes, you're exactly right.
And also the fact that this was caught on the cameras, and I think with just going back to him kind of being that Dennis Rodman, Ron Artest type of player, which is fine when he's playing well. The only question I would have is just how well would the Pacers fans and the team really respond to that if he was shooting 30% from the field or something like that. That's the one thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, and even still, even in the fan base, there's people that love him and there's people that hate him.
Right.
But he has the thing that's going to make him so much money is he has such a tremendous upside, and really his negatives, one would hope, can be solved by maturing. And really, like I said, the antics don't really bother me as much. I know Ray Allen came out and called it buffoonish, which it is. But I mean, honestly, like even look at the Heat. Shane Battier has made a career of doing those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. You need to have a goon. Yeah. So, I mean, Ray Allen, you're right, it's buffoonish, but every team has that guy that goes out and does those buffoonish type of things. So, I mean, I disagree with those that say you can't win with a guy like that. I think you can. And like I said, I think his upside trumps whatever on-the-court things. To me, the bigger problem I have with Lance is the things he says outside of the game, the whole, sign of weakness comment about LeBron, which was blown out a little bit, but you can't feed the media like that to make a story like that. You have to give them something to go off of when they make those stories. So I think he just needs to be a little bit more careful about what he says, before and after games. And really, to be honest, the entire Pacers team could learn a lesson there.
Yeah.
If Lance Stevenson and the Pacers do not care, if Lance's antics are working and it's not distracting the team, and it is getting in the head of the Heat players even a little bit, they are completely fine with it. They don't care what everybody else thinks of him or them. It's not about being well-liked. It's about winning. So I don't think...
And if you're winning, people will like you.
Lance Stevenson does not strike me as a guy who gives a crap what people think about him. You know what I mean?
No.
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. and the kind of guy he is growing up in Brooklyn, the all-time leading scorer in New York high school basketball history, he's always grown up with that spotlight. So I think, like we said, he is only 23, but he's not a guy that this is his first foray into being a well-known person. And like I said, you just hope that talent stays, but there's a little more maturation as his career goes along. But I think the Pacers do re-sign him.
Well, all right. Now we got to get into the yucky, messy part of the show. By the way, did anyone else realize it was 15 minutes before a Johnny Manziel reference was made, and it was during the NBA portion of the show?
Yeah.
Anyway, I know Josh is excited about that.
Got hashtag Manziel Talk Weekly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we'll have to address the big elephant in the room and why the internet exploded with talks of Kings-Lakers all over again after the game last night. I mean, I've never seen sports broadcasting after a game where so many jabs were made at the officiating, subtle jabs where nobody's going to get fined, but they're obvious what they're talking about in my entire life. From seeing Doug Collins, Jalen Rose, and Bill Simmons fake poking at the air instead of analyzing the game and just saying poke, foul, poke, foul. Like, that was the most immature, hilarious thing I've ever seen in my life. From the guys on SportsCenter during top plays making jokes about it. Like, it just got so out of hand. LeBron got, in my opinion, 2 ticky-tack fouls. The other 3 were completely well-deserved. But the thing about basketball is 2 fouls is a huge difference. LeBron is not sitting out the entire third quarter if he only has 3 fouls. Even if he only has 4 fouls, he's not sitting out the entire third quarter. I know you said the Heat played a lot better. Like, the Heat played really well, the role players did, while he was off the floor in the first part of the game. But after spending all that time on the bench and then even more time on the bench later, you can't rely on your bench that much. There's a reason they're bench players. They're not starting players.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that the Heat specifically rely on their one superstar more than any other team. The reason, stuff like what happened with LeBron and how much money they have dedicated to the Big Three is why they need Chris Bosh. All the people who want to say, oh, I hope they keep LeBron and Wade in the offseason, but let Bosh go because he sucks and blah, blah, blah. First of all, Chris Bosh is the reason Roy Hibbert can be a defensive liability for Indiana because of Bosh's ability to stretch the floor and play off pick and rolls and lead those big centers out there with him. So there's that. He can be a decoy. But also sometimes one of your other 2 really good scorers is going to have an off night, and Bosh can supplement that. It's not that he's not capable of scoring. It's that when you're the third option, you're not going to get 20 a night.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that's a point I've made before with Bosh too. I mean, people forget also I think he's gotten some unfair criticism as well. But people forget when he was in Toronto, he was a 20 and 10 guy almost every night. He chose to be a role player to, for lack of a better term, chase ranks.
Yeah, I disagree with that he's a Hall of Famer, but that's neither here nor there. I think I think the problem with Chris Bosh is when you look at how he played in Toronto. The 3-point shot for him was always there, but it was a rarity. I'll have to look up the specific numbers on 3-point attempts, but it's almost like he's just a big shooter now, and he's doing what he's supposed to do in a matchup with Hibbert. But I find often that he doesn't, other than about that 18-foot jumper and the 3, he's really not a presence for the size that he is on the inside. He got a mismatch last night. I think it was in the fourth quarter. And through switches and stuff, he got a post up about 15 feet out with George Hill on him. He turned and shot a jump shot, clanked it off the rim. Is George Hill? George Hill is, I believe, 6'1". You're 6'11". Back that guy down and put in a little 2-foot bunny. At times like that, I just wonder why it's like he's just forgotten how to play the center position. Although he is there to be a stretch 5, he has that 3-point shot, but it seems like he's far too hesitant to go inside, how he was in Toronto.
He's a 5 in Miami. He's a 4 everywhere else. That's the problem. Yeah. Miami's a very undersized team.
Yeah. And by all means, I didn't mean to insinuate that I thought Chris Bosh was going to be a Hall of Famer. I just
No. That was
That's the thing. People say that a lot. They say the big 3 are all Hall of Famers. Oh, LeBron and Wade are. I don't think Bosh is there.
Yeah, I mean, it would just, I think, depend on the way the rest of his career shakes out. But I think with him, it might be a point where it's like, it might get to the point where, the other 2 are in, you might as well let him in too, kind of thing. It's just going to depend on what happens.
I mean, if he has 5 championships and 10 All-Star games, it'll be hard to deny him.
That's one of those things where I think, even right now, if the 3 of them retired, it'd be hard to argue that LeBron and Wade aren't going to be first, maybe second ballot Hall of Famers. Bosh, maybe not.
LeBron would absolutely be the headlining guy on his class, no matter what. He's retired today.
No doubt.
But
I was saying, as far as we were talking about back to LeBron with the fouls, I agree with you. I thought 2 of them were kind of ticky-tack calls. Me personally, in watching the game, I am wondering why LeBron picked up his 4th foul. I believe it was a little over a minute into the third quarter. Why is there no criticism on Spoelstra for taking LeBron out at that moment? Normal standard operating procedure, the mindset of the normal NBA coaches, you sit that guy, you let him get back in, and then, he picks up the 5th foul, which, I thought, looking at it, it was a foul. Stevenson stripped him. You're allowed to shield away from the ball, but you're not allowed to do it while on the move. Similar to, shielding the ball is similar to boxing out a player. You could do it while you have your position. He wasn't making a play on the ball, and I thought that foul was deserved. But I'm surprised that there's little to no criticism on Spoelstra there for not taking him out 11 minutes into the third quarter when LeBron picked up his 4th.
I think it was just a panic thing. I think that he wanted to keep his best player on the floor. It could be as simple as that. It sounds silly, but I mean that sometimes you're panicking, and there's always going to be criticisms of Spoelstra. He got handed the keys to a Lamborghini, so
yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm surprised as much as Spoelstra gets criticized that was never brought up, because
people are kind of laying off of him now.
Yeah. If you also forget that he was also handpicked by Pat Riley.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. He started out as a video editing guy in the Heat's organization.
Most of those guys, Frank Vogel was the same way. He was a video coordinator for Rick Pitino.
Yeah, usually most coaches, they start off doing like video editing or something, like doing like filming or like doing, basically a glorified intern.
All right.
Yep.
Well, even if the fifth foul was by rule a foul, and I'll take your word for it, shielding. We'll go with that. Okay. But I mean, in a playoff game and an elimination game for one of the teams, a extremely important game, that is LeBron James, the best player in the world's fifth foul. It was pretty close. I think you hold the whistle on that. They're both fighting for the ball. That completely changed the landscape of that game. Like, completely. You cannot take your best player off the floor with 5 fouls. Even if he plays the rest of the game, he has to tiptoe on eggshells the rest of the game to not pick up his 6th. And I just don't think you're literally deciding the game on that one shielding play. Do you really think that's worth it? I mean, I saw Paul George face check Mario Chalmers at the end of the third quarter to hit his buzzer beater and completely said I didn't think they should have called it. I said, it's seconds left in the quarter. He's going to hit the shot anyway. You don't need to call that. Chalmers took the hit like a champ. Good for him. There's no reason to really call that. It's a playoff game. I think the same respect is deserved to the before Kevin Durant blew up the world, the league MVP for the rest of the decade, LeBron James. I don't know why you make that silly foul, quote unquote, call on him. It's his 5th foul. If it's any other point, if it's his 1st, 3rd, whatever, fine, call it. I don't care. But that completely changed the landscape of the game. And like the people who want to say, well, fouls are fouls and you call them no matter what, are wrong, because it has always been the refs decide. Like, is this what's the word? Is this a appropriate time? Is this close enough that we can let it go kind of thing? Let the boys play. You know what I mean? I think on that situation, I don't really think I would have called a foul there. It changed too much of the game. Indiana went off after that. And I don't want to take anything away from Paul George, because I'm a huge fan of the guy. He's really developed into his own this last couple of years. 37 points is really impressive in an elimination game. But when you don't have to guard LeBron James all game, it's really easy to score 37 points when you're as great as Paul George is. Any coach will tell you, having your best player not have to guard their best player, especially when it's the best player in the world, is really nice. So I think George really enjoyed that. And how did the Pacers still only win the game by 3 when LeBron James scored 7 points?
Free throws.
I still can't fathom that. Indiana got to the line way more times than Miami, too.
They didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. They really missed some key free throws.
And that's another thing on the officiating side of that. Like when one team gets to the line more often than the other, and it's a home team, and it's a significant amount, along with all of the other stuff, that's when people start to wonder about the officiating. You're like, go ahead.
I think with Miami, there wasn't that aggression to get to the basket. They were settling for a lot of jump shots. Like I said, they attempted 31 3-pointers in that game. I mean, they were settling a lot for outside shots. They only had 22 points in the paint, whereas Indiana had, I believe, 42. Yeah, 42. And 8 of those 22 points were fast break points for the Heat. They really were not working the ball inside. Now, the part of that is they went to that smaller lineup again, which helped them. Rashard Lewis, the aforementioned 6 of 9 for 3. They really weren't. With LeBron out, they really weren't getting to the basket like they should. LeBron only had three free throw attempts in the whole game, and I think that plays a big factor in it.
How much do you think? And I know I probably know your answer already. How much do you think noticing they're not getting calls is going to affect how much they attack the basket? Because a lot of times guys will attack the basket to get to the free throw line, and if they're just not getting those calls going to get to the line, are they going to attack the basket, or are they going to settle for long shots? Now they have been playing that smaller lineup because Chris Anderson's been out, and Rashard Lewis starting in his place, and he played really well in this game. Like what he and Bosch and Wade were able to accomplish significantly made up for how LeBron played, and Indiana was able to take care of the game.
56 points between the three of them. It was a really good effort for Rashard Lewis and Chris Bosch as well. I'm going to ask this. We were talking about the officiating. Was the whole home cooking comment from George that got him fined after Game 4? Did that affect it? Do you think?
I don't know. I think that's another thing too. Is for all the Pacers fans who want to get mad at the Heat fans who are now complaining at the officiating. It's like they're not remembering Pot Kettle Black a few games ago when they were using the officiating as an excuse. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna go both ways. I'm not gonna get on any Pacer fan for complaining about the officiating when the Heat fans will do the same thing. I thought the officiating in this game was much worse from an unbiased perspective because I dislike both teams. But I think that you take it with a grain of salt. I think. Okay, we've seen what happens. Indiana won the game. Now they have to go back to Miami. Anderson should be back. One thing I'm worried about for Miami, Wade played 40 minutes in this game because of LeBron being in foul trouble. How tired is he going to be? Are they going to be pretty much without Wade like they were without LeBron in this game because of how gassed he's going to be? Is he going to have a really off game? Is someone else going to have to step up for Wade in Game 6? And I really don't think Miami wants to go back to Indiana. I think this may sound crazy to you. I know you're going to say I'm thinking it's a little more outweighed than it is. I think Miami has a 75% chance of winning Game 6 in Miami. That's how big of a discrepancy I think it is. I really do think Miami is a much better team. But if it goes back to Indiana with that crowd, knowing they were left for dead and they clawed back into the series, and the way the fans are finally making me happy, and they're like waking up and they're opening up to the team. I think it's 50-50. I think either one of them could win in Game 7, and that's how much of a huge advantage home court is in the NBA. They built that stadium for basketball. It is for Pacers games.
Yeah,
it is. The way it's designed is for home court advantage type deals. If the fans are loud, it works. So, but sometimes they get down on their team, and like before the whole LeBron coming out of the game and the Pacers acting like it's the beginning of the season all over again, they were playing really sluggish, lazily walking down the line. I remember one play where Rashard Lewis literally stood at the 3-point line, and other Pacers players were just walking around, and he just like, okay, and took the three and made it. I was like, what is going on? Like Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy just shitting all over the Pacers, just like their fans and their players for just how much it seemed like they didn't care in a home elimination game. It's almost like they could hear them because they like woke up as soon as LeBron came out of the game and just went on this huge tear, and it was like, where did this team come from? This is not the same team who played the first half. I don't understand where these guys came from. Like, give it to Paul George for carrying his team through this game, because if he doesn't have his career performance, they don't win and they're going home. So. But I think the thing Indiana fans have to be worried about is, and it sounds cliche, but I think they woke up the beast. I think LeBron is really, really mad that he had as poor of a game as he did, and that he's gonna, he didn't say anything about it, and we talked about this earlier, where like, not on the show, we talked about this earlier, where like, Paul George and the other Pacers players need to learn to be more like this, where LeBron did not complain about the officiating at all. He just said, it is another game, they beat us fine. I think he just holds his anger in, and he's just going to come out. And it doesn't matter if Wade plays well if LeBron drops 50 because he's pissed off. You know what I mean? I think they have to worry about that because I think they woke up the beast. So I think that Indiana better bring their A game, because you're going to have a really angry linebacker-sized basketball player charging through the lane on his home court against you on Friday night. So
It will take a Herculean effort by the Pacers, and even then it may not be enough because LeBron is going to come out on a tear. But I've said this the entire series. It almost doesn't matter what LeBron puts on you because even if he scores 50, they still need their role players to give them that extra 30 or 40 points. You have to limit guys like Rashard Lewis and Dwayne Wade and Shane Battier and Norris Cole and Mario Chalmers. You have to limit those guys. LeBron probably comes out and drops 35 or 40 in Game 6. Would not surprise me one bit. But the Pacers have to be able to at least slow down those other guys if they want a chance. 75% for the Heat, that's probably about where I would put it. It's going to take a monumental effort. And if they win the game, we go to 7, it's going to be a blast.
Two things I'm looking to. I do think Shane Battier is going to be that role player who has a huge game in this game. This could be his final home game in a Heat uniform. He's already said he's retiring after this season. Yeah. I absolutely think he's a high-energy guy, always has been. I think he's going to try to have the game of his life if this is going to be his last game in the Heat uniform, because if they lose this game and they lose in Indiana, his career's over. I think Battier is going to be the role player to step up and have a big game. For the Pacers to win, I think Roy Hibbert has to get really nasty because you know LeBron's going to be attacking the basket. You know the Heat are going to be attacking the basket, trying to get those calls on their home court. Hibbert's got to get mad. He's got to be mean. He's got to push people around. He's got to be that inside presence shot blocker, because if he isn't, I don't think Indiana can stop Miami. They're too good at getting to the basket. So I think the Heat finish the series off tomorrow night. If it goes to Game 7, I'm concerned for them. I think it's 50-50. I honestly could not pick a winner if it went to Game 7. I would think it would just be an incredible, really close game, and I don't think Miami wants to have to deal with that. I think that's why LeBron took that pass to Bosh. I think he wanted to try to close the series out now. He's sick of playing these guys. So, yeah. But and one more thing. How great would it have been after the mediocre performance he had? No, Jordan never had less than 15 points in a playoff game, blah, blah, blah. If LeBron does take that shot and makes the game winner.
That would have broke the internet.
LeBron James stat line, 9 points. The Heat win.
Game-winning three-pointer.
This is ridiculous. But, all right, we're gonna move on. We talked enough about Miami and Indiana. It's been one of the more exciting series I've seen in a long time. And I mean, going into it, we had people like our own Josh here talking sweep. So it's exciting that it's been such a good series. And I will reiterate, I said Heat in 6 at the start of the series. So maybe the refs were helping me out in Game 5, so it'll go exactly how I said. I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys an update on the Clippers sale really quick. Maybe 20 minutes ago before the show started, a bid was put in to Shelley Sterling from former CEO of Microsoft Steve Ballmer for $2 billion. Which is twice the amount any other, representative put in of $1 billion. It looks like he's going to buy the team, because as much as Donald Sterling wanted to say, Shelley cannot sell the team anymore because I'm mad because she said she's willing to sell 100% of the team, that $2 billion is going to completely cover all of the taxes they were going to have to pay.
And Steve Ballmer, his net worth is $19 billion, so...
Yeah. He can fucking throw that money easy.
Yeah.
And I absolutely think that's happening.
I saw this on Twitter about a half hour ago, and he bought the team for $200 million.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
He's going to be one rich racist.
Yeah.
He was voted the most hated man in America today, too.
You guys, and this is just rumor mongering here, but you guys know where Steve Ballmer is located at, right?
Trust me, I know.
That's Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's an interesting portion of it that people are already talking about. Will he try to move the team to Seattle?
There's no way they do that. Because as much as I want the Sonics back, trust me, I want the Sonics back, but there's no way that the Clippers, if they move to Seattle and become the Sonics, would make more money in Seattle than they would in LA. It's just
home court attendance was terrible, and that's why the Sonics were taken away in the first place. No offense, Josh. If you loved your team, you'd go to the games.
But I also live like 3 hours away from Seattle.
I'm just messing. That's the point. That's the point I bring up, though. And when Sonics fans all of a sudden care that the days of Gary Payton and Detlef Schrempf are over,
But part of it also was the fact that everyone knew the team was leaving. There's nothing they could have done to save it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think Seattle's getting a team back anytime soon.
Yeah, no, but the only positive from this I would see was just Chris Hansen, the Seattle investors, want to buy a team. At least now there's one more pro Seattle
owner. Yeah,
because that was the big issue, is that there were so many that there were at least 6 or 7. This is neither here nor there, but they said there were 6 or 7 at the very least owners that David Stern had in his pocket. If it came down to it.
All right, we're gonna move on to the Western Conference Finals. The Thunder were down 2-0 last time we were on, and they've tied the series because Serge Ibaka was healed by Jesus apparently and came back from his playoff-ending injury and played amazing in Game 3, 15 points, 4 blocks. Then Russell Westbrook dropped 40 in Game 4, and the Thunder are right back in it. And we were talking like the Spurs had the Thunder on the ground with their foot on their throat, and now it's a tie series. So what do you think the Ibaka factor has to do with it? And Randy, do you think the Thunder can now win the series?
Well, this just shows how much we guess and how much we really don't know. I think Ibaka has made a big difference, but it's also woken up Russell Westbrook. His aggressiveness on defense has just, accelerated so much. The Spurs in the first 2 games averaged 117 points. In these last 2 games, they've only averaged 94.5. That's 22.5 points less than the 2 games that they won. I think having Ibaka back, having that anchor in the middle on defense, has allowed the Thunder, specifically Westbrook on the defensive end, to be more aggressive, to try to front their guys a little bit more. And Tony Parker's numbers have suffered, and he's kind of that sail for the Spurs. How he goes, the team goes. And if you're Popovich, what kind of adjustments can you really make? The only thing they can really do is go with a smaller lineup with Kawhi Leonard. But that's about your only counter against Ibaka at this point. Let's not forget, the Thunder beat the Spurs 4 out of 4 times in the regular season, and now with Ibaka in the game, they've beat them 6 straight times. It's going to take it. I think the winner of this Game 5 wins the series. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I said before Ibaka freaking got hurt that I thought the Thunder were the best team in the West. They were the best team in the West before Westbrook got hurt last year. I think that they match up perfectly with San Antonio. They're a lot younger, more athletic team. And Ibaka needs to be there for that shot blocking and to protect the rim, because San Antonio is a slashing team. Their guards like to penetrate to the basket. They're not a jump shooting team by any means. So I absolutely think that having Ibaka back not only is an emotional lift, because you think you're without your star player and then he's magically back. I wish I could have that feeling. But then, also his on the court presence, both defensively and offensively, he's their 3rd leading scorer, is a huge benefit. And like you said, whoever wins Game 5 probably wins the series. But even if the Spurs won Game 5, it is in San Antonio. I still think the Thunder would have a chance to win the series. I just think if the Thunder win Game 5 in San Antonio, I think the series is over. I think it's more of a San Antonio needs to win this game to win the series, whereas the Thunder don't, because it's a road game for them, and they've proven. Just because they'd be 6-1 against the Spurs after this game, do you really think that they're doomed to lose the series if they lose this game? I don't. I think that if the Spurs lose this game at home against the Thunder and have now dropped 7 in a row against them, I don't think they can beat them in Game 6 in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and Game 5 right now is tied at 32 each with 10:07 left in the second.
Yeah, I was hoping one of you would bail me out and have the score up. Good job, Josh.
I was getting ready to come in with that too. What do you got,
I just pulled up my ESPN app.
Josh gets internet high fives.
Thank you, technology.
Yes.
So all right, Josh. What do you think? What do you think the Seattle Thunder have a chances of beating the Spurs?
Well, this really shows too. I think this is another example of one of the big knocks on Kobe Bryant too for that period in his career after Shaq and before Gasol was that you can't win. It's hard to win in the NBA without at least one competent, if not dominant, big man. I think this is a perfect example for as good as Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are together. Without Ibaka to at least do something in the paint, there was no way they were going to stop. We're going to stop the Spurs. This just made my day even worse.
not just Duncan, but Parker and Ginobili too. Like literally every part of San Antonio's offense is going to the rim. It's 60 points in the paint in game one.
Yeah.
There was literally no one to stop them. As good as Kendrick Perkins can be, there's just not enough.
And without Ibaka, like those first two games of the series, like they didn't. Like I mentioned on last week, they didn't even look competitive.
No, it was a fucking blowout. It wasn't even the Thunder were like a way different team.
Yeah,
it was weird. I thought that the combination of Durant and Westbrook could keep them in games.
Yeah,
like, just their high scoring volume.
They were losing by like 20 a game. It was just embarrassing.
It was gross. It was really bad. I'm really glad Ibaka's back for basketball fans because it's a series now. You know what I mean? It's now I like it better when both conference finals are actually entertaining. You know what I mean? So I'm glad to see. That Indiana woke up and that Ibaka came back from the dead. So that
it's like it was a couple years ago, and I think it was last year. The Lakers went to the finals when they played. Oh, it was the year the Lakers and the Celtics played in the finals the second time, and the Celtics were done like a week earlier. It was hard. It was hard to watch.
I wonder why we even had the regular season this year, because the 4 teams that everybody said would be in the conference finals were in the conference finals anyway. It's like, what was the point?
It was just an extended preseason.
Just start those finals in November, and then everybody can watch the NHL finals too, and not have to worry about them being on at the same time. That makes me the maddest, because I want to watch the Blackhawks Kings series, and I just can't, because it's on at the same time as the Heat Pacers every fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
It's always on at the same time. It does not matter.
Actually, speaking of, I know this really wasn't in the plan or anything, but something that's interesting too with the big issue. I was going to mention this with during we're talking about Miami and Indiana, but after like a half hour, I just like kind of got lost in the conversation.
Right, spit it out, man.
But there in the NHL, there's Randy knows about this. There's an embellishment penalty, which is basically similar to what flopping is. It's to I don't know what the hell the word is, but anyway. But it's basically it punishes hockey players for quote unquote flopping, and it's a penalty. Maybe with as big of an epidemic that flopping has become with the NBA, they should really look into implementing something similar.
Oh yeah, it's so bad with Splitter and Stevenson and Jesus Christ, like.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. I think if you want to get rid of flopping, you have to do some sort of in-game penalty.
Yeah.
Maybe during a timeout, have the referees look at it. In my opinion, an obvious flop should be a technical foul.
Yeah.
And that will get rid of the flopping. That's what in soccer, that's what's begun to try to curb some of the flopping is. An obvious flop that affects the game is a yellow card, which is in basketball terms is the same thing as a technical.
Yeah.
I am all for favor of that. I think the fines are not enough. Let's face it, Stevenson got fined $10,000.
Yeah.
Fining millionaires $10,000.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Not enough.
Obviously, there's no way to get rid of it totally, but I think even if it's just like a technical or even just a penalty or just a regular foul or something, it'll do something to Dutch because. Part of the reason why I've had a hard time getting into the NBA, staying interested in the NBA the last few years is like every 10 seconds there's a penalty, or not a penalty, but a foul. Players are flopping all over the place. It gets to the point where there are games where where a guy gets bumped into and then he flies back 10 feet and there's like it's 20 minutes of penalties.
My 2 least favorite things about basketball, they're huge pet peeves, and I understand that they're always going to be around basketball, are the really dramatic flopping that Stevenson does, which is why I fucking can't stand him half the time. And I get it, that's his gimmick. And then the other thing is when shooters will go up and they'll just ram their arm into the other guy and quote-unquote draw the foul and just get 3 free throws or whatever. Ray Allen was famous for that shit. Paul Pierce. Dwayne Wade did it all the damn time. I hated Dwayne Wade for so long because of that.
Reggie Miller was notorious for that too.
Oh my God, it drives me nuts. It's like,
or when a shooter gets fouled before shooting, and they just throw the ball up.
Yeah.
Like it gets ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh yeah, LeBron used to do that crap too. Yeah. Everybody does.
He tried it last night and he didn't get the call.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I ever disliked LeBron, because he's actually like a really likable guy in like interviews and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I think that hating LeBron is really dumb now in 2014. But the only time I ever get mad at LeBron is when he makes his "Where's the call, ref?" face. Like he gets that like his jaw drops, his eyes get all big, and his hands are out, and he's like acting like he never gets the call. Like he's so upset, and I'm like, Stop it.
He's a perfect
Jordan.
I remember there was a few years ago when it was a game against the Knicks where he made the most ridiculous flop where he went half across the court, and it's it's very hard to really for LeBron to be a believable flopper. When he flops, it's believable. Dude's built like a fucking linebacker.
Yeah.
There's people in the NBA that could cause him to fly back, and they're all fucking 7-footers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Dwight Howard, Roy Hibbert. There aren't too many other guys that could bump into LeBron and send him flying 10 feet.
No. It gets silly sometimes.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I actually think having a penalty versus a fine on a fine on a millionaire would be a huge difference.
Yeah.
But before we get into the NHL playoff discussion, I want to talk about the NBA draft lottery, because the last couple of years I think it's been a huge problem. The Cavaliers have won their 3rd out of 4 lottery, and I really think that's a big problem. I think the NBA has to implement some other system. I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of Bill Simmons. I like his article as long as he's not slurping on the Celtics. I think he's an intelligent guy. So if you can filter out the Boston Celtics talk from Bill Simmons, he's a pretty smart guy. One of the things he talked about doing was if you win the lottery, you cannot pick in the top 3 again for 5 years, no matter what, record or otherwise, so that teams who are inept at drafting don't get rewarded again. Cleveland, Anthony Bennett, and so that other teams have a chance to draft high and to avoid just tanking 2 or 3 years in a row to get a lot of high picks. Because some of the teams who've had the blessing of being able to draft that high haven't taken advantage of it. I mean, Minnesota's picked in the top 7 6 times in the last 10 years. It gets ridiculous. Do you guys have any alternative suggestions for how they could fix the lottery? Randy, I'll start with you.
I like the idea of not being able to pick, but it's kind of what you just said there, that this is Cleveland's, what did you say, the third?
The third in 4 years.
Yeah.
And their record is what? There's no it's you have those guys about once every 6 or 7 years that are you would call a lock the first pick. You're once in a generational type guys. I could see them doing something like that. I'm in favor of that. They would never do it, but I love the idea. I'm actually a huge fan of the way they do some of the things in soccer as far as relegation.
Oh, I was
love to see them move teams down. I think that because people always talk about there's too many NBA teams anyways, I would like to see them do something like that. Because in that way now nobody is tanking because no one wants to be the top 1 or 2 worst teams that you get bumped down for a year and then you have to win in that league in order to move up. They'll never do that, but I would love to see that.
Explain what relegation is for the people who don't watch soccer and don't know, because I think it might be confusing to a lot of people.
So soccer has leagues similar to baseball. You have your major leagues, your AAA, your AA, your single A. Mm-hmm. At the end of the season, your top 1 or 2 teams that finish with the lowest record actually get kicked out of the league. And they have, let's say you're in the major leagues, you're one of the 2 worst finishing teams or the worst finishing team, you get bumped down to AAA. The franchise that wins the AAA championship, guess what? You go to the majors for the next year, and you stay there as long as you can as long as you're not the worst finishing team, you don't get bumped down. So something like that would be really interesting because I'm in that camp that thinks that there's way too many NBA teams. I think they should, in a perfect world, I think they should cut it down to about 20 because I think the talent pool is a little sparse, especially more than it was a couple decades ago.
But then
they would never do that.
Yeah, and also if they also did cut back on the NBA teams down to 20, I would pray to all that is good and holy in this world that they would trim the playoff teams too, because I mean.
Oh yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah, you'd have, because I mean, if there was 20 teams in the NBA, you'd have
16 of them make playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to cut it down to I think probably 6 to 8 teams per conference.
I think 4 in each one would be fine.
Yeah, if it's that small, but like even now, you could really argue that the playoffs need to be cut back, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
I think one of the problems with the relegation thing in the NBA is we have the D League, which is nice, but I think you would have to kind of edit it to where a team would have to be the worst team maybe 2 years in a row to make sure they're not tanking. Because I mean, you kind of can't just shit on a team that has like an injury or something, and or a team that's like Milwaukee, where they were like.
Or when something happens
legitimately bad.
Or when something happens like with LeBron, when LeBron left Cleveland, they were pretty much up shit's creek without a paddle.
Yeah, there was nothing under their control.
Yeah.
I think maybe like 2 years in a row
2-3 years or something like that.
Being an NF team. Also, the other problem I see with that is like you have millionaires on the NBA teams, and like you're promoting a D League team who is filled with a roster of players who make like under $100,000 each. And then they're obviously going to be the worst team in the NBA, and then they're just going to get shipped right back down to the D League. And that NBA team that's in the D League is just going to have such a larger amount of talent than the other teams. It's just going to dominate them. But I do think there are ways, things like that are a good idea. You can work around stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think keeping any team who wins the lottery from picking in the top 3 for 5 years is a good idea. I think if you pick in the top 3, you also shouldn't be able to pick again in the top 3 for at least 3 years.
And also,
picking third is pretty fucking good too. So.
Yeah, but also by that token, you think if you're picking in the top 3, you probably hope that making that pick takes you out of the lottery consideration anyway.
Right. If you pick first, I think you would have to pick 4th if you won the lottery again the next year.
Oh, right.
Just move them out of that lottery.
Yeah.
Or just move it all the way down, move the next team up. And if you pick them on top, it'd be the same thing.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, an even better way to do it could be move them out of the lottery entirely.
Yeah.
Just you're the first team after the lottery teams. That would really take away tanking.
Or
what the Sixers did this year was bullshit.
Yeah. Or completely just, I know this would never happen. It's kind of funny. Just with the way the lottery is set up.
Reverse it.
Reverse that. Where like the teams that Phoenix that barely missed the playoffs actually have the best shot at the number 1 pick. I think
the Suns with their 4 first-round picks, I don't think they need to have Embiid or Wiggins. Sorry.
But you know what I mean? I didn't mean necessarily, but there's an example like that where it shows, at least they're trying to win. They just aren't good enough. And there's teams like the Sixers that I'm pretty sure a third-grade AAU team could hang with.
What if we had you had a voting panel by either you had a majority of the coaches in the league had to pick, because I think Milwaukee would probably be the consensus most needing of the number 1 pick.
Or do it like the Super Bowl bids, where every team that's in the lottery has to make a pitch to the NBA why they deserve the number 1 pick.
I mean, teams like the Lakers and the Heat, or the Lakers when they were good, like the Heat and the Thunder, they're not going to care what the worst teams are that get the picks. They're not going to be biased.
Yeah.
Maybe they would keep teams from their own. Maybe you can't vote on it if I think you would have
team in your division
lottery,
or something.
If it's a team in your division, you're not allowed to have a say.
Yeah.
That would be fair.
Or even just the most unrealistic way possible, have every lottery team, they each pick 1 player, and they go into a steel cage, and the last man standing wins the pick.
How about the players just sign where they want to sign? We don't have a draft. That's another way of fixing shit too.
Yeah.
But then you have all these high talented rookies all decide to go together. They do their own big 3.
Yeah.
They all sign
and then you have to get rid of the salary cap, and this is NBA.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and I think too, going back to the point, I don't think it's as big of a deal, because like I said, it's not like the NFL where your first or second round pick are a bit more consistent. Like we said, Cleveland's had a couple of picks up front, and they're still struggling as a franchise.
And really, on the topic too of Cleveland, I think the NBA has paid them back for LeBron leaving by now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
You're going to get handed Embiid or Wiggins. I think you're fine.
Yeah, whichever one, and then Kyrie Irving. Okay, Cleveland, we get it.
We get it. You lost LeBron. It sucks. Move on. Speaking of moving on, we got some quick hits to get to before we get to the NHL playoff stuff. Tampa Bay Buccaneers Manchester United owner Malcolm Glazer passed away at 85 yesterday. So thoughts and prayers to his family. Unfortunate to see him go. He gets to live a healthy, full life. So that's good. Interested to see where the Bucs and Manchester United are going to go with their new owners. It's crazy that he owns such 2 successful franchises, but I didn't know he owned the Buccaneers and Manchester United, so that's cool for anyone who didn't know. Yeah. Cowboys linebacker. Sorry, go ahead.
With Manchester United, you could have said Ronald McDonald owned him. I would have believed you. So.
Right? Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, with all due respect.
Right. Thoughts and prayers again. Cowboys linebacker Sean Lee tore his ACL in practice, getting blocked by Cowboys rookie offensive lineman Zach Martin on a screen pass. Another reason they should have drafted Johnny Manziel. So they're going to be without their best defensive player. Second Manziel reference on the show. They're going to be without their defense.
Manziel references are becoming the new Super Bowl references.
Yeah.
Right? Speaking of which Super Bowl reference. So they're going to be without their best defensive player on a team that was already ranked 30th in the league in defense last year, so I don't think the Cowboys are going to be too happy about that. Third reference for Manziel, he took first-team reps with the Browns at OTAs, so when Johnny Manziel isn't being mentioned on Sports Talk Weekly or at Vegas Gambling with his coach's permission, he's taking first-team reps with the team, and, but Brian Hoyer is going to be the starter and all, right? And the Toronto Blue Jays have won 9 straight. And I don't know if the game's still going on, but last I checked, they were down by 1. They had a chance to win their 10th straight, which is interesting because the Blue Jays haven't won the division since the 90s, and they're looking like arguably the best team in the American League right now. So,
but to be fair, they're also in a division with the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Rays. So,
that's just some quick hits to get to. So now we get to talk about Chris's favorite sport, hockey. We'll go ahead and talk about the series I actually enjoy first. I haven't got to watch, but I've actually been following. Sports Talk Weekly has gotten me to pay attention to hockey. I'm excited about this Blackhawks-Kings series. Hearing you guys talk last week and hearing other people talk, it seemed like the Blackhawks were significantly better than every other team in the remaining in the playoffs, but they were down 3-1 before yesterday to the Kings, and they were facing elimination, had a 3-1 lead late in the game. The Kings stormed back to take a 4-3 lead. Blackhawks finish it off in overtime 5-3. What do you guys think is going on? Josh, start with you. What's going on with the Blackhawks? How are they? I mean, the Kings are normally a defensive team, but they're shooting the fucking lights out. So.
Yeah, I don't know what it is too. Like you mentioned, they're normally over the last year and a half, they've just become like this offensive juggernaut. It's hard to explain to it just with hockey more than any other sport. It gets to the point where players can get so streaky. Like Ante Kopitar, when he's on, he is unstoppable. But that's the problem is sometimes when he gets shut down, the Kings don't have a really reliable secondary scorer. But when they're scoring like they are, it really doesn't seem to matter. And also doesn't help the fact that just throughout this series, Corey Crawford, who had one of the if not, and he's not the best. Jonathan Quick, he's the number 1 goalkeeper in the NHL. We can make a case for Corey Crawford being number 2, but he just hasn't looked good this series.
Yeah, the Kings going into the series or going into the playoffs are the lowest scoring playoff team. Mm-hmm. So it's surprising that they're scoring at such a frequent rate against Chicago. I know you said that Blackhawks games are typically higher scoring affairs, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I mean, it is a little surprising to me that they're down in not that just they're down in the series, but the fact that we're looking at a game 6 and then we're not talking about the Blackhawks have a chance to wrap it up, but the Kings are.
Yeah.
I think the facing elimination the last 2 seasons, the Blackhawks are 12-0, I believe. I think they force a game 7. I think the Blackhawks will finish it off. Randy, what do you give me your thoughts on the series so far?
Yeah, 23 goals in 5 games for the Kings. No one was expecting that much, and I was shocked that they were able to run off 3 games, and they had Chicago on the ropes. I did not get to see last night's game, although I did have a guy in my section 2 rows behind me with a Blackhawks jersey on, and he was keeping a close eye on it, so he was able to keep me updated on the score. But yeah, how far can they keep this hot streak going? Because even though LA lost, they still scored 4 goals, which that's usually going to be enough to get the win. Mm-hmm. Because the Kings are Chicago, excuse me, had only scored 12 goals in those. 8 goals in the first 4 games. So, I mean, that it's just going to come down to, can the Kings keep this going? Can they score enough to get over the hump? Game 6 is I think it's kind of what we talked about with the situation with the Heat and the Pacers. This Game 6, I think, is going to be LA's best chance because they do not want to go back for Game 7 in Chicago. I think if the Kings are going to win this series, they have to win the next one. They have to win it tomorrow night.
All right. Any other final thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, no, I really can't. I mean, I really can't. There's nothing else I can really add. And it really is what's going to come down to, I think, for the Blackhawks to force the Game 7 is what Corey Crawford's going to show up. Is it going to be the guy that last year was lights out, or the guy that throughout the last 3 games of the series looks average at best?
Yeah.
And like we mentioned before, when it comes to the NHL, for as much as we talk about, guys like Patrick Kane, Kopitar, Sidney Crosby, whoever, I think what can propel a team to a championship more than anything is just when a goalie gets hot and stays hot. Perfect example is Jonathan Quick looks like he's back to the form he was at 2 years ago.
Yep.
All right. Before we get deep into the Rangers-Canadiens discussion, do either of you guys have a scoring update on that game? The Rangers have a chance to wrap it up tonight.
Yeah.
I think it's tonight. Well, while Josh gets into that discussion, Randy, why don't you get me a check out on the score on that for me?
Really?
Rangers 1-0 at the end of the second period.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so just give me some thoughts on are the Rangers gonna lock it up tonight?
I think they will. Like I mentioned last week, as much as like my heart would want to see Montreal do it, it just seems to me that just watching the first 5 games of the series, the Rangers are just a better team and they've shown it. I mean, they're like the Kings in a way where they just seem like the more physical team, and it seems like it's at times has been overwhelming Montreal.
Mm-hmm. Randy?
Well, I think I agree with you. It seems like Montreal, they've accomplished they made it to the conference final. It seems like, okay, we accomplished what we set out to do.
That was their cup.
That was their goal for the season. So I mean, the Rangers, like you said, the Rangers are just the better team in this series. I fully expected, seeing they're up 1-0 now going into the third. I expected them to win tonight, and looks like they may be on their way.
Well, I think we covered everything. You guys have anything else you want to add? No?
Josh?
Okay. No, nothing.
Okay, cool. All right.
Nope, I'm good.
Josh, go ahead and plug your stuff.
All right, yeah, there's my Twitter at Gomez_time76. There's my fantasy football blog that over a few days ago, put my first preseason rankings out that I'm sure that I know Chris didn't really appreciate my Drew Brees ranking, but
you're wrong.
Well, it's freaking May.
Homer.
It's fantasyfbcorner.wordpress.com. There's also a pro wrestling blog I write for. It's wrestlecrew.wordpress.com. So
Randy?
Follow me on Twitter at Rousdower24. That is ROWSDOWER24. Fun stuff, lots of sports, lots of nerd stuff. So you guys love to get a follow, and I'll follow you back.
Alrighty. And then you can check us out on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Check out the version of the show. Share it with your friends. Give it a thumbs up. Help us climb the rankings. You can follow us on Twitter at Sport Talk Weekly. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Sports Talk Weekly. You can join our Facebook sports discussion group, Burbank City Sports Talk, where we talk about all kinds of shit that we don't talk about on the show because we have no lives outside of sports. And thanks for checking us out every week, and tune in again next week. And take care. Have a good night.